a lot of new feature set and refined the ones we have. This year, we've seen things like annotations, again, more ways to layer, which we're going to show off today. A lot of focus around sharing cases and how we can get our clients to engage with those cases, becoming more digital in our practice. We've got a lot planned for the new year, so hopefully you guys are excited with the development of the platform so far. And again, as always, if you ever have any sort of feedback on the platform, we always want to hear it. We want you to send in the feedback to ask us a question. So without further ado, I'm going to get started here. I'm going to log into my account for Life Design Analysis. And again, just looking at the user list, it looks like a lot of people who are already active members with us. So again, thanks so much. For those of you who are watching it for the first time, again, LDA is something that you can sign up for. Start a 30-day free trial and test it out. I think you'll see what a lot of our members see in that our goals are mainly to increase your productivity, increase your revenue, and increase your compliance. So today I want to show you a couple new concepts, and we're going to start working through a few of the cases. So feel free to send your suggestions in there. One of the suggestions that I got that someone asked, and they said, I think autocorrect caught them a little bit, but the question I believe was, can you do seg funds in Life Design Analysis? Or there's a new type of insurance product that I won't mention live here on our webinar, but you know, a lot of times there are products that, you know, we want to illustrate inside of Life Design Analysis. We want to show our clients, we want those professional reports, but maybe the data isn't just automated where, you know, to the kind of the way it is with life insurance and critical illness in the system. Now, remember, we are a data visualization system. So while a lot of the convenience and time savings is built off the ability to quickly search in a rate and pull it in, if there's ever sort of a product that you wanted to put in there, such as a seg fund or an annuity or something like that, again, there's still almost always a way to get those sort of products in. So I wanted to illustrate a seg fund because that was one of the questions that I saw a couple times come in for the requests on can we illustrate this type of product. So as with anything, I'm going to start off with by creating a new case. And I'll also preface this by saying I am by no means a seg fund expert. Most of my expertise comes in that life insurance and critical illness domain. But I do know a couple of benefits of seg funds, you know, mostly that they carry that kind of insurance component with them, like a mutual fund with an insurance wrapper around it. Again, I'm going to create a brand new client. I'm just going to call this seg test. So again, I'll say I want to make a new client. I'm going to call this seg test. And again, I can give it a company name. Again, I would recommend always using a birth date. In this case, I'm going to actually make my client a specific age. And again, I'll say this is a male. Again, I'm going to go down and hit save. Now, seg test is created. I can continue on designing my case for Mr. Seg here. Now, again, as you know, a normal case would develop, we'd pick from either a combination of life products, critical illness products, or run one of our recipes. We also have a very powerful manual area. Now, in the manual area, you do see options for things like whole life and overfunded UL. And we really named these to give you ideas that, you know, that's the most common type of data that's input into these areas. But because everything in our system is quite flexible, if there's ever a corner case like a seg fund or an annuity or something like that that you would like to you know, represent that data in a kind of comparison format, you often can get that information in. And the example that I'm going to focus on today is a seg fund. Now, you could pick overfunded UL or whole life. Both will lead you to the exact same area. Again, as I say, this was more nomenclature to help you kind of think about that. But just think about these as open-ended spreadsheets. These used to actually be called generic in the system. So again, I'm just going to select whole life as my example. Now, again, remembering that because we're a data visualization software, I mean, we call this whole life, but really we're just representing that kind of data. So what I'm going to do as my first step in this is just go over here to the edit plan area. This edit plan area is where I can do things like change the title of what I'm actually presenting. So again, the first thing I'm going to say this is a seg fund. So I'll put it in there as my title. And again, this is what's going to appear in all of those different legends. Now, again, I can also put a description in there. So let's say, for instance, and I'm just going to look up over here on a new tab, I'm going to say, you know, what is a seg fund? So I'm going to say, basically, I'm going to take my description. And again, just to show everyone, I'm just going here from the OSC, like the Ontario Securities Commission site. And I'm just grabbing a little bit of a description about what a seg fund is. So again, I'm just going to get a little bit of information about this concept and copy it. And again, I'm going to actually include that in my description over here. Again, anything I can do to add detail to my reports is going to be helpful. And again, this might be a little bit of a lengthy description. Let me add some of this back in the form of a report note too. I'm just going to add a little bit of a description. I'll clean this up from their website formatting. and just give it a little bit of an idea of what a seg fund is to my consumer here. So again, I've got a nice little report note, and I might want to say something like assumes 5% rate of return. So I can add any kind of custom note in there. Now I'm going to save that, and that's going to update all of that information about my title. So now I've described what this product that we're actually presenting is now a seg fund. Now the next step in this is I've got to associate some data with it. So again, when we purchase that seg fund, you know, very much like anything else, it has a premium for it, it has a cash value, and in the case of seg funds, there's often an insurance component to it, and that's kind of the beauty of it. There are some, you know, advantages of seg funds, disadvantages of seg funds, mostly the fact that it's locked in, and some of those higher fees. But again, if we want to represent the data, again, all we have to do is hit paste spreadsheet data. Now, the paste spreadsheet data, again, this one is now for a seg fund, so we see we have columns to represent all of those different areas that we want to represent. So things like net annual premium, this would be what we're investing into the seg fund. Total cash value, that would be the fund's performance, and the insured component, whether it's 75 or 100% of the amount that we're going to get back. We're going to call that the insurance component of the seg fund. Now, again, there's also a chance that, you know, let's say our 5% rate of return or whatever we design in our seg fund quote doesn't pan out. We might also want to put a reduced value in there for things like the, you know, the cash value. So again, I'm going to choose Equitable Life. I know they have a seg fund, and I'm going to go to their software and just launch it up here because, again, I need some data to put behind this to represent exactly what we're doing. And again, this is where I say I'm not necessarily a seg fund expert. So again, if you're in this market, again, feel free to submit your comments later. We'll definitely go over this again, but redesign your quote and design whatever you normally would or whatever you think fits those client needs. So again, I've picked a 45-year-old male here. I'm illustrating to age 71. Again, I've selected an EL active balance growth portfolio. You can design whatever you want. I mean, essentially what we're trying to do here is get, you know, sort of some data behind how this product is going to perform. And again, you can see I put it at a growth rate of 5%. You can see I put planned deposits. I put about $10,000 a year till age 65. So I've designed this in there. Again, you know, you can design these however you normally would, additional deposits, even do withdrawals, because really all we're after in this sort of scenario is the data that drives this plan. And always when we're looking for that kind of data, we're going to see that it is shown in this Get Spreadsheet folder. So I'll just go back, and again, it's this in Equitable Life here. You can see if I hover my mouse over, it says Spreadsheet. It might look a little different in different platforms, but generally there is always a view data where we can see sort of the information about the quote. Now, you know, a little bit different from the traditional whole life that you'd see in our videos where we would export that whole spreadsheet and bring it into Excel. We built the manual spreadsheet area because there were some softwares that didn't have an export capability. I think most of them have it now. But again, we still need the ability to copy and paste from any source. So even if you have your own Excel worksheet that you wanted to bring data in, or in this case, I'm bringing in a seg fund, we can simply copy directly from the illustration software and paste into LVA. And I'm going to use a keyboard shortcut. You can see if I click here, you can probably hear me, it does nothing. So right click doesn't work inside some of these fields, but the Control C shortcut does. So if I do Control C on the keyboard, I can copy this data range. And you can see this is basically the total annual deposit that we're going to put into the seg fund. You can see I designed about $10,000 a year for 20 years. So again, copy this data here. It's highlighted. I'm going to Control C because I can copy it out of the illustration platform. And then I'm just going to put my mouse in the first box. So again, we're year one. Our net annual premium, of course, is that amount that we're depositing into this product. So again, I'm going to paste it in there. And again, you can see it's filled down very much like an Excel sheet would operate. You can see all 20 years, we've got our $10,000. Now, again, I'm just going to keep flipping back and forth. Again, one little handy shortcut is if you hit Alt-Tab, it'll actually bring up the past window. Or again, you can just launch it right from the base bar here. Now, the second one we want is our portfolio value at the end of policy year. So this is basically our growth rate at our projection of 5%. And you can see, you know, if we put $10,000 in, $10,500 after year one, and we get this sort of growth rate on our product. So again, this is kind of like our primary example of cash value in terms of if we thought about a whole life. So this is where I'm going to copy this information here. And again, I'm going to place that as our total cash value. Now, as our total insurance benefit, again, I'm going to use 100% of the premium as the return. So again, if we did pass away, basically our guarantee here in this case, or our insurance, is the fact that we would get in any kind of deposits that we put in if we passed away. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to highlight this cumulative annual deposit. And again, think of this as just basically your sum of premiums this becomes our kind of insurance component of this particular product. Again, if the premium is reduced, we're still going to have that same pay length. So again, I can grab this annual deposit here, even if in a, like kind of a reduced example, the premium stays the same. We're still planning to put $10,000 a year in, but we can see we can now reflect a reduced cash value. So again, I'm just going to go through here and look at our equitable quote here. We can see this is if it overperforms +1. We're going to put this one as a -2. So we're going to say if it underperforms, we want to show a reduced example. And again, remember, you can get multiple reduced examples in there. So if you wanted to put it in there, you could go for it. And again, I'm going to do copy, and I'm going to come back and paste that information in there. Oh, just grab this here and paste that down. Okay. And we need our reduced insurance benefit, and that's going to be the same here. Doesn't want to grab my cash value for some reason. So when in doubt, try it again. Perfect. Okay, so now we've got all our data in there. We've got our primary example, what we put our deposit in, what our cash value at our 5% is, what the insurance component is. We've also included a reduced example. All we have to do is now upload that data. And again, it's going to upload anything we've reflected. We've changed the name to a seg fund. And again, we can put it in there. Now, the other thing I want to do is I'm going to set my client age override. So I picked a 45-year-old male. Again, in the future, you probably use a birth date to put it in there, but I'm going to override it. And then the other thing I want to do is I just want to kind of be a little bit more careful about what kind of components that I put in there. Again, because I'm illustrating something a little bit outside, this would be a great area to use something like a concept of ours and maybe even make your own for a seg fund. So again, this could be something like advantages and disadvantages of seg funds. So I could take, again, I'm just copying from my example that I had over the OSC site, and I could say, here are 3 advantages of seg funds, and I could put, a little bit of information about that. And I could also put something like 3 disadvantages of seg funds. And again, maybe clean up the formatting here again because I've copied it from a website, but feel free to use your own, kind of descriptions for these. Again, if you really like a concept and want to use it over and over, you can actually go into the manage template area here and make this a template that you can select from over and over. As you can see, we've added a few what we call global templates, which mean are available to everyone, but you can also add your own user-defined templates. So again, feel free to customize this concept depending on how you would like to see it perfectly. So again, I'm just going to call this seg fund info. And again, if I wanted to save that, I would just manage it as a concept. Again, I'm going to go down here and say, I want my report notes, I want my mission statement. In a product like this, I probably wouldn't include the annual premium schedule as well as the sum. I'm going to use the sum because I want them to see how much, I'd probably take it out. We'll look at it in the cash value there. So I'm going to clean up a few of these, like I'll take out credits in the CDA. I'm going to have my presentation summary, but I'm going to take out, kind of most of these here. I might use something like, maybe an IRR calculation or something like that. But for the most part, again, I'm going to be pretty selective on my metrics and now hit generate report because again, I want this to be a pretty simplistic report. So even though we don't have, rates for things like seg funds in the product, you can still add that data in there. And again, think of that manual spreadsheet, as I say, as more of a generic option where you can get any sort of data in because again, a lot of the value also comes in being prepared with a very professional presentation. So you can use that kind of that presentation technology and associate other different product types in there. Again, you can see we have our mission statement and we have our seg fund info. As I said, I'd probably clean this up a little bit if I'm actually presenting it to a client, but I just wanted to show you how you could put a seg fund report note in there. Again, we've got our seg fund plan here with a little bit of information on it. Again, we've got our deposit in there. And again, we can go through and take a look and see, here's what we've deposited in red, and here's what we've got back as far as cash value there in green. And again, we can look at some examples of reduced examples. That was a -2 example. And all those same sort of things, like even though it's more of an investment product inside that insurance realm, again, we're going to be able to reflect that data in there. And again, really use that manual area. You can change the title and you can really reflect, sort of any kind of thing that has a cost to it, a cash value, or again, if it has no cash value, you can put 0 or an insurance benefit. And again, we can also see that it does have that insurance component with it as well. So again, we copied and pasted that in there. Finally, we end with that nice presentation summary. So anything we've designed in the quote. So again, encourage you to think about things like even as an annuity, again, where we might have a first-year premium where we put that entire lump sum in and then have, represent that cash value as sort of the payout to the client. However, it may be an insured annuity where we can also put an insured component to it. So lots of things you can do there with that manual spreadsheet in getting, sort of different product types in there. So we had that question around seg funds. I always think that's a great one. Again, if you have any, sort of other cases, definitely send me an illustration. Again, I can show you how I would put it in there, but it's, whenever it's not found automatically inside the system as far as searching rates, you can add it manually through that open-ended spreadsheet. So that's one way you can do it. Okay, so that's our first topic. I'm going to look through the chat here briefly and see if we have any other sort of questions here coming through. So again, if you have any questions, I see, is it for life? Is it for living benefits? We can get to some of the living benefits ones. I do see a lot of questions coming in, even over my PM here for layered recipes. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to pass it off to John Jarvie. And he is going to present a layered strategy. So I am going to say, make presenter. All right. So John, can you take us through how you would do layered scenarios? And again, I want to see maybe a couple different layered scenarios. So again, we've invested this year quite heavily in, making layers that much easier for you. A lot of the thing I like to think about is that, oftentimes we make a financial plan that changes throughout life. And sometimes I find, insurance products, this is the product you need right now. We don't necessarily think about making a plan for those changing needs. So layers are something that I hear a lot of feedback around. I especially hear the feedback from consumers. So, what they have said to me in the past is when I show a layered recipe for someone young, they say, why didn't my insurance agent, I wish I had known that when I was 20 years younger. Because again, they didn't have the cash flow then to see the appeal of whole life, but a layered strategy is probably perfect for them. So John, take us through a couple examples of layered plans here.
Passing it off to me, Charlie. Well, so again, thank you everybody for joining the webinar. So yeah, as Charlie mentioned, we are going to go over those layered plan solutions. And to go ahead, I have added in an existing policy that we're going to compare against this layered solution. And just to show you some of the details, it's a term 10 policy that has been in force for about an 8-year period of time and is set to renew. And we're looking at $1 million benefit just to make the numbers even. But with this example, this renewal is going to be coming up in 2 years. And the premiums, of course, are going to increase. Now, most clients of ours, they are going to have a permanent need for insurance, but it probably isn't going to be the same benefit as the term. So in this case, the $1 million. But they may still need that $1 million coverage while they still have their mortgage, the education fund, the need for income replacement. So what we're going to do today is we're going to add in a couple whole life policy options where we're combining it with a term 10 policy in the form of either a rider or blending it in life design analysis with a term 10 policy or a term policy and having it reissued upon renewal. So we'll go over both types of examples. So what I'm going to do first off is I'm going to add a whole life policy into life design analysis. And to do so, I'm going to select the whole life option and I'm going to choose from one of the carrier options. I'm going to stick with Equitable just like Charlie did earlier on. So I'm going to select Equitable Life Whole Life. And that's going to give me the options to either import a spreadsheet file or to paste the data from the spreadsheet itself. But now it's going to ask me to go into Equitable's illustration software, which I'm going to do right now. So I've already loaded this up right here, and I've created my policy that we're going to use in this example. So we're going to start off with a 20-pay policy, face amount of about $250,000, and you can definitely vary the face amount that you're having for the permanent solution. I'm going with 75% coverage of term, 25% coverage of whole life. I'm using the paid up additions dividend scale, matching the client's information. But in this example, I'm not going to use a rider. So I'm just going to bring in the whole life coverage, and I'm going to add a term policy to this within life design analysis. Now, in Equitable's program, to bring this into LDA, I'm going to go to the view spreadsheet option at the top, and then follow that up by selecting the export to Excel option. Once I have it in Excel, I can either save this to my computer and load it into life design analysis, or I can simply copy and paste the information into the program. And that's what I'm going to do here, just by clicking on this icon in between the A column and first row. And I'm just going to simply right click and copy, go back to life design analysis, select the paste option because I copied the spreadsheet, and simply right click and paste in the text block and click on upload. All right, so now we see that it's been loaded onto the report. I can see a basic preview of the data that's been brought in. So now we have that first component of the layered solution, that being the permanent. So now what we're going to do is we're going to blend this permanent coverage with a term policy. So in order to do so, I'm going to select the plus term option, and I'm going to search for my term policy inside a life design analysis. Now I'm going to change the benefit amount. So I'm going to say that this policy is going to be for $750,000 for that other 75% of the coverage. I'm going to change the term length to a term 20, and to stick with the same carrier, I'm going to use Equitable Life in my company filter. Once I select search, I'm going to see the results appear, and now I can add it to the case. Now, what I'm going to do in this solution, as opposed to adding it to the report and having the guaranteed renewal show, I want to show the client what it would look like if they were healthy to reapply or repurchase this policy at the renewal period of time. So in order to do that, I'm going to select the drop-down arrow to the right of where it says add to case, and I will then have the option to add it to the case as a reissue. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to add it so it stops at a guaranteed renewal, so we don't have that massive increase in premium from, let's say, age, in this case for Equitable, be 80 to 85. Okay, so now that we have that term policy on the design case page, we're now ready to combine that plan together. So in order to do so, I'm going to use our combine plans feature, and I'm just going to simply select the term 20 that we brought in as the reissue and the whole life policy we've imported from Equitable software. Once I'm done selecting them, I'll select the combine plans option once it turns into that navy blue color. And now I have that combined solution right here on the design case page. Now you're going to notice it still shows the other policies individually underneath, but it's graded out, so it's no longer going to show it on the report. If you wanted to do so, you'll see that there's a show report icon, the little eye logo on the right-hand side. But in this case, we're going to leave it so it's hiding and we're showing that combined solution on the report itself. Now, as opposed to just saying Equitable Life, Whole Life plus the term 20, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the edit plan option to change the name of this policy on the report and then provide some more details in the description for my client. So what I'm going to do in this example, I'm just going to call this option 1. And I'll put in the bottom here that there's a term 20 policy that will continue past the first 20 years. So I'll leave it as that, but you can put any description in here that you want to for that example. But once you're done, just make sure to hit save and it will apply those changes. So now we have that new policy name on the legend. Okay, so now that we have that one solution on here, let's do this the other way with adding in the rider directly in the illustration program. So to do so, I'm just going to repeat the steps I did before by clicking on plus whole life and then selecting Equitable Whole Life. As it's loading up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into their illustration program. So I'll bring that up. And I'm just going to make a slight alteration to this policy that I've already created in here because we still have all the basic information that we need. So I'm just going to add in that rider now. I'm going to say that it's going to be for a benefit of $750,000. And I'm going to say that this one goes up until age 60. So this way we don't have that lapse or we don't have that renewal occur and the rider goes only until the 20-year time period. So we have a shorter amount of time where we have that full $1 million benefit, but it's still another great alternative to provide the client as opposed to the existing term policy. Oh, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to close the spreadsheet that's already open in the background. And now I'll export it to Excel. So just like before, I'm going to copy and paste the data into Life Design Analysis. And that will load the information onto the design case page, just like it did for the previous example. Okay, now that it's on the design case page, just like before, I'm going to change the name. So I'll call this one option 2, and I'll say includes a term 20 rider in this example. And okay. All right, so now we have our 3 policies that we're going to show in this layered example. So what I'm now going to do is select the generate report option to put this together, and we'll take a look and see what we have here with this. Okay, so as I go through this report, we'll be able to see these options. So I've added on the reason why concept template we have in, so feel free to check those out yourself. Now, the needs analysis would be a good complement tool to use for an example like this, especially with the interactive capabilities that Life Design Analysis offers. Because initially the client in this example would have close to $1 million need for insurance based on the needs analysis we've created. But as they get older, their mortgage is going to go away, same with their need for income replacement, education fund, debt, but they probably have a permanent need of insurance like they do in this example for either estate taxes, final expenses, charitable gifts, whatever the situation may be, which is causing the need for permanent insurance, which is why we're presenting these options to them and why they should go away from their existing term policy. But to go along with that, we can show them the example. So here we're looking at all the policy options that we have on the report, and we can see in the visual example the premium difference between each of the policies. So I can see here the increases that are going to be occurring with the existing term. At year 20, we're no longer going to be paying coverage on the second option because that rider goes away and it's a 20-pay policy. But with the other two options, we're going to be paying till at least age 40. And if they stuck with the existing term, well, you see how high it gets up in price. So it doesn't make much sense to continue it on past that. And to further support that, in both cases, we're looking at here that the term is going to surpass both permanent options and become by far the most expensive, leaving the whole life combination layered options as the more inexpensive options. And then we can break down the cash value. So here's the first option where we have that term policy going up until age 80, that meaning that we're having the longer amount of coverage for that $1 million benefit. And we could see the cash as it accumulates. And the next chart should be a very similar example because we're dealing with the same numbers for the permanent policy. We're just not paying into it as long because we don't have that term policy that's going to be going past the initial 20 years. And here we can see the benefit for option one. So we're starting off at $1 million. It's increasing with the dividend inside of the policy, but at age 80, it does decrease. But as you can see at that point in time, it's almost at that $1 million like the client had before. Or if we look at the other solution, our benefit drops off after 20 years, but again, still is growing inside the policy. And if we want to show a side-by-side comparison, that's where I highly recommend to add that overlay option. And you can even do it just to say, condense the report by 2 pages. So you don't have to have the two going over each individual policy. You can blend them all together. So it's a great example for this type of report that we're creating right here. So we can see we're getting a higher amount of coverage for a longer period of time. But after the client reaches age 80, we are going to have the same amount of coverage on both options. So that's one way that you can put together a layered solution. Again, this can be for any type of case, no matter what initial benefit you want to have based compared to the term coverage. There's many ways that you can do this. And if you have a specific example that you need assistance with, feel free to contact any one of us within the Life Design Analysis team, and we can be more than happy to go over a personal demo of how we can put that together for you and how you can optimize that report to look its best. All right, so what I went over today isn't the only way to use a layered solution in Life Design Analysis. So what we're going to do next is I'm going to have my colleague Nick Ferguson go over the layered plan option that we've now added into the design case page and show you how that could work for other layered plans. So I'm going to pass my screen off to Nick right now, and he can go over that for you.
Hi there, everyone. Thanks for attending the webinar today, and thanks, John, for passing things off to me. Yeah, so today what we're going to cover is the layered plan solution that we have available as a function built into LDA now. Now, similar to how John went about putting together all those products within this case here, I've got a 40-year-old male non-smoker, and I've also got a pre-filled personal needs analysis here, looking like about 750,000. But for now, what we're going to do is actually go into the layered plan. Once we click through here, we can define exactly what we want to do in terms of what product we want to use, as well as what proportions within that total insurance need we want to allocate to each product. In this case, we're going to go with 3 different layers and an overarching total amount of $750,000 for the total insurance benefit. And so we can throw that in there and add our first layer here. So this first one, in this case, what I'm aiming to cover off is a $150,000 worth of expense, mainly allocated to what would be this particular individual's education costs for his 2 children he has. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to put in a Term 10 policy here. And like I mentioned before, we'll go with $150,000 to cover off those expenses. And for this, I'm actually going to go with a specific carrier, just so we can combine all these together. So we'll go with SSQ. And now we can add our second layer here. And at this point, what we can do is, again, define the specific carrier. And for this second layer, I'm going to provide a somewhat longer term solution, mainly to cover off their mortgage expense. And in this case, it looks like they're dealing with about $350,000 worth of coverage that they need there. And so I'm going to plug that in here. And for this particular solution, we're going to add a Term 25. So we select that here. And the final step of the process, add the third layer. And in this case, also going to add an additional SSQ policy. And in addition to that, we're going to add some permanent insurance into this solution just to provide some overall coverage over the course of this individual's life, as well as into later life after retirement with final expenses, things of that nature. But in this case, I'm going to provide $250,000. And for this, we're going to use a whole life policy with the life pay option. And then we can go ahead and actually add this to the case now that we've finished putting this all together. And once we've clicked that Add to Case button, it's actually going to go out, grab all that information, and automatically combine these options together within the case. And so what we'll see is actually 4 items in the design case page. These 3 at the bottom you can see are slightly grayed out. They're not visible currently within the report, but what we can see here is the top option is all 3 of these combined together. And what
I just wanted to jump in and just mention all of the rate integration is provided by LifeGuide. So I always like to mention that as we go through there. Again, if you are a LifeGuide subscriber, you do get half off. So always important to mention and be thankful that we do have that integration. But go ahead and continue. Thanks, Nick.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thanks, Charlie. And yeah, that is a huge part of our system here is being able to draw on those rates. It quickly puts something together like this in such a quick manner. But the last step in this process I like to do is just clean up the appearance of this a little bit so we can kind of have a better looking overall results in our report. And so what I throw in here is simply just take out this additional information because we know all 3 of these are SSQ policies. And then I'll go ahead and take that out. And here we can see all that information here. Now we could also include specific descriptions of each of these policies, whether that be particular underwriting information in the description, or we could also give a greater explanation of what this layering plan looks like within our report notes. And once we finish that, we can actually go ahead and finish off just by putting the entire insurance benefit in there, and then we can click Save. So now we've got that all cleaned up and combined together. I'm just going to go ahead and quickly check our components here to just clean up this report a little bit. So go ahead and remove those options and then generate the report. Now, something important to note as well is when you are changing different variables like the different components as well as different options within the design case page, even if you don't click Save, once you've navigated towards Generate a Report, it's still going to save those options. And so we can see that down below here. We can see that needs analysis that we originally filled out. And then just below here, we can see the premium schedule for that entire solution here. And so we could see For the first 10 years, we've got all 3 of those products active. Then at year 11, that's where that term 10 drops off. And then at year 25, that's where the term 25 drops off. And we have that remaining whole life policy at the end here. And we can see that just in a graphical representation to kind of better explain to our visual learners out here. That raw data might be a little bit confusing, but this picture here paints a pretty clear description as to how all this is working. And again, we can see a pretty steady climb with these summer premiums. And as well, we can see the cash value associated with this whole life policy here. Now, one thing to note about this SSQ policy in particular is that it does have that fully guaranteed cash value here. And so we can see that option in comparison to these summer premiums. And again, we can see another graphical representation of that total insurance benefit, how that steps down through that layered strategy.
And Nick, this might be a good one. Maybe you can show adding a report note. So what I really like about layered strategies like this is that, you know, when you have a defined need, like let's say the mortgage comes off at year 25 there, this would be a great area to add an annotation to that particular data point. So if we go to year 25, we could actually say this is where your insurance drops because your mortgage should be finished paying off by that point. So again, we could add a custom call out there for something like that.
And now we can see that annotation dropped into the chart here. We can also toggle those on and off just using this toggle callouts button at the top right of these charts. But as far as putting this layering strategy goes, that's really the conclusion of my part here. So what I'll do is I'll hand things back to Charlie and see if we've got any additional recommendations in our chat to further continue with the presentation here. So just pass this up to Charlie and we can go from there.
Perfect. Okay, so I pulled it off. So we've had a couple questions. One of the ones we just got was around living benefits and can I include a link inside my video? And both of those came from Ryan. So I'm going to help Ryan out here and make a new case. Again, I'm going to use my sample client here, who is a 50-year-old male. Now, I'm going to do an insurance benefit, maybe $25,000 or something like that. And what I want to do is just, again, use our critical illness component here. So again, I can do a search for some CI. I can say, you know, I'm going to do term 10. I'm going to search my preferred companies. Again, I'm going to keep this one pretty simple. One of my favorite comparisons with CI is like a term 10 to a level to 75 or something like that. So again, go down. You can look at the, you know, kind of your preferred list of carriers and select the one that you feel, you know, best represents that. I'll just say Great West Life here, and I'm just going to add their Oasis T10. Again, I'm going to repeat that search. So again, I want to do another CI comparison. This time in my term length, I want to pick a level to 75. And again, I can search that as well. Now, the one thing I really like with CI, and again, I'll take the top result here. I'll take this SSQ one. Now, one thing I really like with CI is, you know, I think a lot of people don't necessarily appreciate how hard it is to actually get an offer in your later years. So, you know, at someone who is 50 here, thinking about this sort of decision of T10 versus level to 75, you know, I might want to show them that, you know, yeah, this T10 is an option and it's definitely more affordable. And I think once they see the comparison, they would still see value in this level to 75 product. But I want, you know, when I'm doing CI, I really want them to know how hard it is and even how the pricing goes, even if they do remain healthy and get an offer. So one of the other things that you've seen with our term products is that ability to reissue. Well, that ability is also available within CI. So again, if I do CI and I come back here and I again select that T10 and say search, one of the abilities I have, and again, I'm just going to again take this Great West Life one, instead of just saying regularly add to case, which adds those guarantees in there, I want to be really stubborn and say, I'm going to assume again that I'm going to keep healthy and add to cases or reissue. And again, you know, if you haven't seen this before, this is going to go out and look at age 50, age 60 until the client is no longer able to get an offer. And the reason I do this is it's more of an objection, but I like to show that even if a client stays healthy, how much of that, you know, kind of the assumption of risk is built into the pricing anything, even if they do get a healthy and clean offer because of that increased age. So this is a way that you could do, kind of a, and I'm just going to say do it to age 75 here for the analyzed age, but this is a great kind of CI comparison here, and I'll generate report. Now, after we look at this sort of living kind of benefit scenario, I'm going to pass it off to John to show how we could include the video into a case like this. Maybe we even want to bake it into a report note template that we could actually customize. Again, you can see I've got a link in here in my mission statement, but we're going to show how we can get it into any report. So again, let's just take a look at our premium schedule here. We've got our regular T10, and again, we're going to see, when it gets reissued, we're going to see that it basically assumes like the same kind of renewal schedule that, again, we're basically, it assumes we're unhealthy because of our increased age. So again, it's going to increase on us versus something level that, again, when we look out at it over time, again, we can see that level, the 75 option, is much more affordable in the long term there. And again, it's something to really consider with CI, because again, even an offer, if we remain healthy at a future age, is going to cost us almost as much, as if a guaranteed renewal was in place. And again, a great presentation summary there. Now, let's say, for example, we had a great video around a concept like this, and we wanted to add it into a report note. I'm going to pass it off to John, and John's going to take us through actually making something like a concept of your own or using one of our concepts. So again, I'm going to pass the presenter to John, and you can take it over. Take us through how to do a report note, but how we can keep it on file here.
Yeah, absolutely, Charlie. So as I bring this up, I'm just going to add some policies onto the report through our recipe feature in order to access that report note section. But yeah, let's create one of those templates. So as you've probably always known, we do have our report note section where you can add in any text to the report to customize this for your particular client, or maybe the concept that you're going to be going over with them. But recently we've added in this specific concept section where you can choose from any one of the preset concepts that we've created, or you can create your own concept under the manage template setting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into that area, and up on the top right, I'll see that I have the ability to add a new report note template. So I'm going to select that option. So first, it's going to ask me to name it. So I'll be able to see this name when I select it from that concepts dropdown. So I'll just call this one, since I'm going to put a video on there, I'll call it the explainer video template. And I'll name this for the title on the report itself, how much life insurance do I need? So that's a nice, easy example. And to go along with the video link, I'll put in a little description. So let's say, how do I know how much life insurance I need? And then I'm just going to paste a link to a video under here. So I have this one link, and I'm going to hit save once I'm done, and that's going to load it into this area. And now I'll be able to see it on the list of templates that I have. Now, I'm just going to use the shortcut here to go back to the last case that I was looking at. And I'm now going to go back to that report notes section. Now, what I can do is I can click on concepts now, and I'll be able to see that explainer video underneath the user defined section of the concepts area. And it's just going to auto-populate these sections with what I had entered in before. Here's my title, here's my description, and here's the link to that video. Now, when creating the report, I'm just going to click on generate. The third page down should be that report note, and I'll be able to see that link. Now, notice how the text is bolder, and I have the ability now to select it. If I click it, here's the video, and I'll be able to add that now onto the report. So if I were to send this to my client, or even going over this with them in person, they'll be able to have access to it and use that content as well as the content that we've added to the report itself. So feel free to take advantage of that if you have your own video or just anything you think would benefit the client that maybe is a little bit different than just the report itself in the form of something like a video. Feel free to add that into the report through that section, or create your own template for your commonly used cases or concepts. All right, so we'll pass it back to Charlie, and we'll see if we have any other questions that we can go over today.
I just see a question, can we add pictures inside the explainer template instead of the video? Right now it is just parsed for links and text. Pictures are something we are looking to add, but again, one of the challenges there is sometimes we share these things on different screen sizes. So adding pictures is certainly something we'd like to add in there. One of the things, so again, if you have a link to that picture, there's no reason you couldn't link that picture. So again, if you have supporting, sort of material that you use inside of your report, again, feel free to link to it and include it in there. But again, yeah, we definitely are looking towards adding things like putting in pictures and things like that inside the report. Okay, so let's just see here. So we are almost at the end of our time slot. We're at 2:45 here, which is generally the end of our webinar, but I want to leave it open and see, does anyone have any other questions that we've got in there? Ken, I see you've got one coming through there, but I don't know if we'll have time to go through that full scenario here. For layering, okay. And Ken will definitely help work with you on that case and again, show you how that layering works. Any other kind of questions around any of the other concepts or any of the new features that we added recently? I see a question, can I send the needs analysis on a standalone basis? That's a great question. Actually, we get that one quite a bit. So hopefully everyone can see my screen here. Let's say, for instance, we did want to, again, send a needs analysis or, again, compose a needs analysis and send it on a one-off basis. One thing I definitely want to cover here is the fact that, and again, I'll just go with my sample client here. Again, you can see I've got quite a hefty needs analysis done for my client. One thing, yes, again, I've got this case set up here, and again, I could link my client to send them or have them a link to fill out their own needs analysis. That's something inside LDA. So again, I can link my client, have them fill it out. Let's say though, again, we don't necessarily want to send them the full report. We want to do something like a standalone needs analysis. How do we accomplish that? Well, again, because each report component is customizable, and again, sometimes we want one, sometimes we want all. Most of the time you have a specific set. Let's say, for instance, we do want the needs analysis as a standalone. Again, all we have to do is select that as our only report component. So again, I did that really quickly. I used the select all to select all report components. When you hit that, you get the option to deselect all, meaning unselect all of them. And again, now I can pick the individual one I want. So again, I'm going to pick only the needs analysis, and let's generate that report. Again, one of the caveats here is that you do have to have some kind of product associated to generate the report, some kind of insurance product, but you don't necessarily have to show it. Again, I've only got the one page here, so you can see it's the only report component that I've selected. This is going to be the only one that shows up. And again, just like any of our reports, we can share this needs analysis alone. So again, if this is all I want to share as a page and say, here's the needs analysis I did for you, again, I can copy this link to my client, send it to them. I can create a PDF, and this was going to be my standalone report or my standalone needs analysis. So again, if I want to perform it, have a one-pager needs analysis, there we go, it's number one page. Now again, it doesn't mean it has to be one page. It can be the only component. I could do that and say, well, you know what? I want to kind of dress it up a little bit. So, I want my cover page in there. I want my mission statement, which might, contain some E&O information in it. I want it to contain my contact details. So again, now I have a very slim report. The one page is the needs analysis, but now I've sort of dressed it up and given it a little bit of a suit to wear. So again, I have kind of a detailed needs analysis. I pushed it out to 4-page, but I slipped a little bit of extra information in there. So again, even a report note paired with the needs analysis can be a very powerful sort of presentation. Again, it's something we are working on. If you just want to produce a one-pager, instead of having to add some sort of term product in there, we're looking to have that as an option. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty simple. Just basically make that the only checkbox as the only report component that you have on there, and it'll be the only one that shows up in there. Question around, are we looking to share directly from LDA rather than copy into a personal email and sending it manually? We will look to connect to other email providers, but for the most part, it's something we figure that we don't want to duplicate and make you pay for something inside of LDA that you'd likely have elsewhere, and that's why we've sort of stayed away from calendar and email inside the system. But here, I do see a question about, can you send a blank needs analysis for a client to fill? That's a great question. Yes, absolutely you can. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a new case. I'm using our little handy sidebar over here. I'm going to make a new client, and here I'm going to use you. And I'm just going to say test here, as I always do. And I'm going to make you 50 years old and male. And again, I'm just going to save you into the system here. Now let's say that here is a brand new client of mine here. I'm going to say continue. maybe I don't know him that well, and I say, I don't know how much insurance to guess for this person. I don't want to get into all those intimate details about, how much debt do you have and things like that. So again, if I want to establish the need and have the client fill it out, of course I can do that. That's something that's brand new in our system. It's been very well received, and all I need to do that is, again, you can see I have not set my needs analysis. I go into my client, into a design case is probably the best way to get to it. I simply click edit for the needs analysis, and this takes me to where, me, the agent, I would normally fill this out. But again, I don't know any of this information. I want my client to fill it out. So I'm going to go top right here. You can see this little box that says link your client to fill it. And it's sort of the same thing that we would have our shared case. Again, I get the link. If I want them to fill it out, all I have to do is copy it. And again, I can send it to them. Now, what I'm going to do here is, just because I have the whole team on, is I'm going to actually send this to a team member to fill out here. So let me just pick one of them. Let's see here. So I am going to pick, looks like John, you're at the top of my list here. So I'm going to pick you here. I'm going to send this link to John. So I'm just going to email it to him. I've sent it to him in a G chat. Now I'm going to go back. I'm going to go on with my day. I'm going to go out and prospect more. John, I can hear him typing away. I've sent it to my client. I emailed it to him in another screen, and now I'm going to wait and see what happens. So that's how you would basically link it to them. So you just copy the link, you can email it to them. Remember, LVA is something that is mobile and responsive, and a lot of consumers these days actually do a lot of their work on their cell phones. So, I mean, even think about something like, it doesn't necessarily have to be email. It could be text. It could be, maybe even social media, right? If you're connecting with people on LinkedIn, you might be able to send them a PM and say, I saw your comment on so-and-so. If you're wondering how much insurance you need, here's a link you could fill out. There's lots of different ways that you can actually distribute that link to your client. I sent it over our email platform, which is just GChat. So I didn't even, again, I just sent it to John over an email. Now, the nice thing, again, is I can go about doing my business, and the next time I refresh LVA, you can see all of a sudden I've got a brand new notification. And what I want to do is I want to go check out what that is. You can see Zahir has filled out that needs analysis that I shared. I want to go check it out. And again, this was actually John filling it out, but again, that's how I would link my client to this. And again, you can see it's all been populated here. Now I see I have a need of 777. That's perfect. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back to that case. I'm going to use exactly that insurance benefit. And again, I'm going to run one of my recipes. I'm going to do T1020 versus min funded UL. I'm just going to say add recipe. And, again, it can be that simple. I can link my client. They can fill out what their needs are. I run a recipe, and now I've got some options in a presentation to show them. And again, this is the great thing, again, about putting it together. We've got a fully professional presentation, our mission statement, the needs analysis that the client has filled out. Again, this is not us taking a guess at certain items. They've actually filled out these fields. Again, options to fulfill that need. We've got some term, some longer term, some permanent. And again, that's where we can get into sort of that fact finder, that layer. But again, I could make a nice presentation like this. Again, link my client back, make a PDF, email it to them, make one of those shared cases again, and now share that whole presentation put together. So again, that's a great question. So hopefully that answers that one. Does it always choose the cheapest option available for each term funded, min funded UL? Unfortunately, yes, it does. Unfortunately as well, some of that automation comes at a risk that, again, we have to tell it to select some product, and it doesn't necessarily know. Now, with the recipe though, you do have certain options within that best rate. So again, you can do all companies, which will strictly take the lowest price of the first one from that ranking. You can do your preferred companies, which means it'll only select from a company that you've specified in your account settings as preferred. Or again, if you know what, I want to work with a specific company, I can say pick that specific company. And again, because it's only going to be looking within one carrier, of course, the top product is going to be the best rate. So at least keep it consistent across there. I see edge benefits as a one. Sometimes we don't have control over which companies come in through the life guide filter. One of the things, though, again, with risk is you can say those simplified issue or guaranteed issue products and find them in there. Again, I'm not an expert on edge benefits product, but I will look into that one for you, Ken. So we've got about 5 minutes left here. Again, any other questions, feel free to send them through. We'll answer anything. We thought this might give kind of a nice open forum for you guys to ask questions and get answers. One of the things I can say for the new year is that we're trying to roll out something more in the form of weekly webinars. So we are still going to have our monthly webinars. We're still going to set agendas and try and show interesting and new topics. But we're going to try a Tuesday tip, I believe. Tuesday, I think, is going to be the day we're going to use, where we're going to do quick 20-minute webinars focusing on one of the features in life design analysis. And again, it won't take up all of your time. But again, hopefully it gives you more opportunity to join these sort of webinars and ask questions. So you should see more webinars more frequently. And again, we'll try and do more of these open forum ones where you can submit your questions. So before we close it out for the end of the year, do we have any other kind of easy ones that we can do in the next 4 minutes? Okay, well, I don't see anything coming in, but again, as always, we're always looking for interesting new topics. So I really appreciate the feedback we got around layered insurance recipes, seg funds, how to add content of your own, such as video links and things like that. And again, if you do have anything, where can we find the video? Is it the video recording of the webinar? All the video recordings of the webinar are actually on our YouTube channel. One thing that's really nice, and again, this is just, if you search for life design analysis, as soon as we finish the webinar, we record anything. So again, even some of the features that we've covered in today's webinar, we have individual feature videos on them. So again, really encourage you. Again, I'm looking for more subscribers. I've only got 135 here, so I don't know if video is your preferred platform, but again, tons of videos, tons of guides inside the system. We're going to see a lot more blogs. We're redesigning our blog right now. So there's a lot of really great things to come in the new year, but I really appreciate everyone's support, and I'm glad you guys like the open forum concept. So again, hopefully we'll be able to replicate this. I thought this would be a good month just because we'll have a few less people. But anyway, I want to thank everyone for joining. I want to thank Nick, John, and Melissa for helping me put on these webinars. I want to say, have everyone have a great holiday season, have a great new year, and I look forward to increasing business, saving time, and unveiling a lot more exciting features to help you guys do your job. So thank you very much to all of our subscribers, and have a great year ahead. Take care.